mic uninvolved.
Hey guys, HossUSMC here, and I wanted to do this series on fire teams, and I just wanted to quickly kind of say what my experience is or what my expertise is in fire teams. And you guys know I have lots of videos talking about my service in the military. I have a whole story time about them. One in particular talks about what I did during my 4 years in the military. And so I know some basics about fire teams, and I wanted to talk to you guys about what I've learned in the military and what I've learned since then, reading about tactics and fire team movements and things like that in this series. But first of all, I wanted to answer the question, what is a fire team? So first of all, fire teams can mean different things. The Army has their own version of the fire team with different numbers of people and different makeups, but I'm going to talk about fire teams in relationship to you, the citizen defender, and what fire teams should be made up of. A fire team is just a small unit, and what a small unit is, it's the smallest unit in the military, and what it generally is it's 3 to 4 people in the Marine Corps, but for this, I'm going to say for the citizen defender, it's 3 to 6 people. Once you get up to about 8 or so people, that's usually considered a squad in the military, the smallest squad that you can go with. Squads can go all the way up to 16 or 20 people even, if you're talking about infantry squads and things like that. For the citizen defender, we'll say 3 to 6 in my personal opinion. These fire teams are going to be made up of 4 to 6 riflemen. So that means that it could potentially be every single person in the fire team would be a rifleman. So what else could there be other than a rifleman? Well, these things are potential positions in the citizen defender role. Obviously, not all of us are going to have access to machine guns and grenades, but it's a possibility. The first one here would be a designated marksman. So that could be potentially one person, or it could be potentially 2 people. And that could be a multitude of different things. Your designated marksman could be carrying a bolt gun, which I would not recommend for a designated marksman. Or they could be carrying just an AR-15 that is built more like a very accurate rifle. Or maybe it's the exact same weapon as what everybody else is carrying, but it has a scope instead of a red dot or iron sights. The other potential would be a machine gunner, which would be, or just someone with maybe a large capacity magazines, that he's just carrying all the large capacity magazines. Maybe he's got a bump stock, I don't know, whatever you may have. Maybe you actually own a machine gun and somebody could fill that machine gunner role. That would be a support role to the rifleman. Everybody who's not a rifleman is in the support role to the rifleman. And then of course there's the grenadier, which could be whatever that is. If you have a 40mm grenade launcher, maybe you have a 37mm grenade launcher, maybe you have access to those things, maybe you've captured them from an enemy unit, whatever the case may be, that would be another position. Now personally, this is how I would set up a 6-man fire team. You have 6 roles to fill, 3 of them being riflemen, riflemen, riflemen. You have your fire team leader, who's also going to be a rifleman, but could potentially be maybe the grenadier or something like that. But the fire team leader cannot be the designated marksman and cannot be a machine gunner. Then I'd have one person in the role of the designated marksman and one person in the role of a medic who's also a rifleman. So that would give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 riflemen plus 1 designated marksman. I would then split my citizens fire team into 2 more groups, which in this way, this would be more accurately termed a squad, but because of the size, I still call it a fire team, and then a sub-fire team. And what I would do is I would split it right there and put the designated marksman with the fire team leader and a rifleman, the medic rifleman and the other 2 riflemen together into sub-fire teams, choosing one of these men to be the leader or the sub-leader of this group, while the fire team leader maintains control of this group, but also has an assistant or a sub-leader that could potentially take this over. Instead of splitting it into 2, you could then potentially split it into 3 groups. Then this guy who was the leader of this 3 is now the sub fire team leader of this group. Maybe the medic is the sub leader of this group, and of course the fire team leader is going to be the leader of this group. And then you could split your forces into potentially into 3 groups or into 2 groups, but I would never go below 2 people. I would always keep 2 people together at the very least. 3 is much better. If you had 9, that would be even better, because then you could potentially split it and have much more differences in how you split it. One thing that's very important in a fire team is that you have well designated roles, meaning that your designated marksman will always be your designated marksman unless of course he's injured, and there's always going to be a designated leader for however you split that group up. No matter how you do it, that should be predefined before you do it. So when you're setting up your fire team with your friends, or you're going out to do your training, Joe always knows that he's going to be the sub leader if it gets split in half, and he's going to take Bob and Zach with him, and if they split again, then Bob and Zach know who's in charge of them, and so on. Training and pre-planning like this prevents any type of miscommunication, and that when the fire team leader says split, or execute such and such an order, that nobody asks any questions about who's in charge or what somebody's role is. Everybody knows already who's in charge, who's going to send which person where, and there's not going to be arguing, so that things can happen as quickly as they need to happen. That means that it's happening and not saying, hey Bob, don't you think we should do this? No. Zach needs to be following the orders of Bob, because it needs to happen as fast as possible. Well guys, I hope this helped you out with what is a fire team, and it will help you in kind of forming those roles and those leadership roles and all the other roles that are involved. I'm going to try to cover some other things here soon about fire team movement and things like that, so stay tuned for that. And also in the near future, once I get a couple guys together, we'll be doing some field examples of this same sort of stuff.